Okay, so we've grouped the rig, we've connected all the pieces together, and generally the last stage of buttoning up a rig is making it foolproof, idiot-proof, rig for dummies, whichever is your favorite somewhat negative term. We want to button it up so that the animators can't break the rig by accident because we left something open that they shouldn't have access to. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire rig head to toe because I want you guys to think about it as animators and try to decide what you think how you think the rig should work. So I'm just going to go over some major ones and show you how to do it and leave it up to you as to your own decision as to what you think should be done with all the major controls. So, for example, if I think about the ankle control, this is actually my master foot controller. So with this, the animator should have the ability to rotate the ankle left, right, front to back, and move the ankle because that represents your main IK control. So ultimately, the master foot control should be left alone. If anything, probably a good idea to get rid of scale and maybe visibility if you don't want the animator to hide it. But yeah, I definitely would recommend hiding the scale. You don't want the animator scaling the foot all by itself. So I would right click on any value that I don't want the animator to touch. So in this case, scale. Grab all three XYZ by grabbing their names and dragging down, right clicking, and saying lock selected. Or if you really want to button it down, you can say lock and hide selected. So now they're just gone. Now to get them back, if you've made a mistake, don't panic. Just select the object that you just performed that operation on. Go into Edit, Channel Control in the attribute editor. And then what you're looking for here is there's two things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to make it keyable again because you can see that the scale is no longer keyable. It's in the non-keyable hidden realm. So if I find scale XYZ here, I can move it over to the keyable column. So now it's back. Now it's still locked, however. You see the gray here. So now we'll go to the locked tab, select all the locked attributes, and move them over to the non-locked. And now it's back to normal. So easy to fix. And by the way, you'll notice this is the default. Look at all the other options that are available in here. There's so many keyable attributes that you didn't even probably know existed that you could manually bring them back. I wouldn't recommend it unless you actually knew what these were all doing. But yeah, there's a lot of hidden stuff here that is not out in the forefront in Maya. So once again, I'm going to grab the scale and lock and hide selected. And obviously I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Now, for the other foot controllers, it's a totally different story. The animator should only be allowed to rotate these. That's what they're for. The animator should not, under any circumstances, be able to move any of the other foot controls. That's not what they're for. Foot movement should be controlled at the master foot controller. These are only to create extra pivots. So for these, I should be grabbing translate and scale and locking and hiding them. So all the animator can do is rotate. Same for, again, all four of the secondary foot controllers. So translate, scale, lock and hide. By the way, this is something that if you knew scripting could be automated with a script. You could have a line of Python or Mel script that when your rig is done, assuming you've built the rig with a naming standard that you've defined, you can just run the script and lock and hide all the parts of the rig that you want the animator to not have access to. So it's things like you don't need to know scripting to rig, but you do need to know scripting to make the rigging process faster and more efficient. That's where really the coding comes into play. All right, so obviously it's the same thing for the left and right side. I'm not going to do both. Just making sure I got them all. So I should only have rotate available for the secondary, and the master foot controller should be translate and rotate. Now I come to the pull vectors. Pull vectors have one job, to aim the knee. That's it. So really, I should only be able to move the knee side to side, or translate it. If you wanted to adjust it up and down, it's up to you. Front to back, I wouldn't touch it. So I'm going to just set mine up so that the only thing I've got left in the knee is translate X, which is side to side. So the only thing the animator can do here, as you can see, is move this side to side. No matter what's happening, I can move this side to side, but that's it. And that's okay. That's what it's supposed to do. That's how it's designed to work. Okay, working my way up. Master hip controller. This one is pretty much an everything controller. It should be able to go forwards, backwards, up, down, left, right, and it should also be able to rotate. So I'm going to leave translate and rotate alone, lock and hide the scale. Secondary hip controller. This one, in my rig, is mainly designed to give you a little bit of control over things like contrapposto, side to side, and tilting your hips forwards and backwards. It's not designed to be moved. That's what the master hip control is for. So I'm going to lock down translate and scale. These, it's kind of up to you. You can animate with this a different way. This skeleton is very flexible. If you want to limit it to just rotation, you can. However, if you want to get a little bit more finer control over the squash and stretch, you can also use it for that if you allow movement. So for that reason, I'm going to leave these the ability to move and rotate, but not scale. So I'm going to lock the scale on each of these. Same with this one. It should be able to move and rotate, but not scale. Okay, that brings us to the shoulder. Shoulder is up to you. Again, anatomically, you can lift your shoulder a little bit, but you might want to give yourself some limits. So this one, again, it's a bit up to you. I wouldn't give full reign of it because, again, you don't want the animators to pull the arm out and destroy the character that way. So maybe what you could do on this is set up a limit system. So first things first, I will lock out the scale. I did forget to freeze transformations on this, which was a bit of a boo-boo. Actually, I'm going to freeze the translate too. I'm going to show the limits on the feet. So right now I've only got the ability to rotate. FK, anything FK, forward kinematics, means rotation. That's by definition, it's rotation. So that definitely should be rotation only. Lock and hide. Lock and hide the scale. Do the same thing for this arm. So all I've got is rotation. I've already got this done on the IKFK switch. IKFK is 100% constrained with the parent constraint to the end slave joint. you should not be able to do anything on this but change the switch and maybe the visibility. So I've locked and hidden everything on the IKFK switch. That's not something for animation purposes. It's a utility to allow you to turn something on and off. So you should not have direct control over this as far as positioning it goes. Our head and neck are both FK setups, so that means rotation only. For both those. And that is more or less it for all the major lockouts we need to do. We could also, on the IK side of things, same thing for the pull vector. That should be translate only. And the IK wrist controller should be, it should have the ability to both rotate and change position, but not scale. And again, when you're going through these, think about how you would animate and think about other rigs that you've used. And think about how the human body works when it comes down to deciding what should be set in what way. Now, I did mention the limits, and I was going to show it on the shoulder, but I've decided the most logical place in this rig to use limits is probably on the feet. For example, I don't want the animator to be able to... So this controller here, it is 100% designed to pull the foot forward, lifting the heel off the ground while keeping the toe flat. It's not really designed to go backwards and go down through the floor. So for something like that, you might want to create a limit, and which essentially limits the amount of rotation that you can have in these values here. So it allows you to rotate, but only a certain amount. So to set up limits, just select the controller you want to add the limit to, hit Control A to go into the attribute editor, and once again, this is a transformation thing that we're playing around with. So it's going to be under the first tab here, which is the transform node. And if you look down, you can see there's a limit information rollout. I'm going to open that up. And you can set minimum, maximum values, and you can have the current value. So what I'm going to do is figure out this way. So forward, I'm going to say this is the maximum amount of rotation I want to have in the positive direction. So I'm going to round it up to 60. And I'm going to turn max on, and I'm going to set it to 60. I'm going to turn min on, which is the opposite direction. I'm going to set that to 0, so it won't allow it to go past 0. So now watch what happens when I grab the controller. It will not let me, rotate past that value. And it won't let me rotate past 60 going forward, so I can't over-rotate. So limits are a great way to kind of keep the animator within check. Some animators hate them, especially if you set them with a small range. So my suggestion for limits, if you don't want to annoy the animator, is give them a few more degrees than you think they're going to need. And that way they feel like they've got the ability to, if they want to exaggerate something, they can. So for example, maybe if there's if the character is doing a swan dive off or a bungee dive off of a bridge and they want them to hang off the ledge with their toes on and want to be able to dip the heels down a bit, right now they wouldn't be able to because we've got the minimum set to 0. So maybe we give them minus 10 degrees at least, so that they can overdrive it just a little bit, and they feel like that, again, the decision is up to them whether or not they pull it a little bit farther. So that's limits. Pretty basic. And you can set limits on anything. For example, if you want to set, there's only a certain amount of many degrees that you should be able to rotate the ankle side to side. So maybe you'd set a limit on that. I could set it to maybe 45 degrees or 35 degrees in each direction. So minus 35, plus 35, and now that's it. That's all I can rotate the ankle in those directions, and then 0 will be the default. And same thing here. Maybe this is my maximum value. Now the cool thing is, you can use the current value to set the other two. So if I want to set 85 degrees as my maximum, I can type in 85 and hit this right arrow. And you can see it's set 85. I just turn it on. And now that's set. Now if I do the opposite direction, so maybe minus 40 as my minimum, pipe that over, minus 40, pipe that over, turn it on, and that's now locked out. So you could set limits on anything. Just be, again, conscious. Think about it as an animator while you're doing them so that you're setting them within reason. Now, grading-wise, the majority of the grades are on the connections and the function of the rig. The things that we just talked about, the final, pretty much everything in this video. So setting limits, locking out, of the total mark, those things are about 5%. The first 3 goal submissions, as long as you submitted those are an automatic 10% each. So those are 30%. And then the grades for the rest of the assignment are divided equally between the function of the legs, spine, and arm setup. So the function of those individually are divided equally between the remaining, is it 35, or sorry, not 35, 65% of the grades, just divided equally between the 3. So keep that in mind when you're kind of prioritizing your time. The most of your time should be spent on making sure that the legs, spine, and arms function individually. That's where you're going to gain most of your grades. The final step is for the polish is worth a tiny amount compared to the overall function.